The name of this is Outdoor School 50 years ago, my first positive experience. This is being recorded May 17th, 2020, 50 years after May 17th, 1970. This occurred at Camp Adams Outdoor School site. It involved Rudy Bohm, also known as Digger, the site supervisor, Jack Sharpe, known as Grungus, a senior counselor at Camp Adams Outdoor School, Rhoda Landels, known as Rhoda, a plant resource specialist at Camp Adams Outdoor School, myself, my name's Jack Lynch. At the time there, I was known as Cletus. A month earlier was my very first experience being a junior counselor at Outdoor School, and that was in 1970, and it was at Trout Creek Outdoor School site. And as I'd said before in other methods, I was as far as I was concerned, a complete failure. I had not done as well as I should have done. Control of the kids was not good. Resource studies work was fine. I already had that down. But all in all, my experience there was as a failure. A couple weeks after that, a letter came in the mail. Multnomah County Intermediate Education District Outdoor School was looking for some more volunteer male counselors. They had a shortage coming up. I think that was for week 7. And they wanted anyone that could to apply and hopefully come and bail them out. I decided I'd give it one more try. Maybe I could do better. They accepted me. The next thing I know, I got a notice saying that I was not going back to Trout Creek. I'd been assigned to Camp Adams. In retrospect, what one camp does when they have a weak performer and someone else needs somebody is they send the weak performer. They don't send their top-notch counselor. I was the weak performer that got sent off to another site. Sunday morning came, my gear was packed, headed on out. When I got there, I met Digger. Something about him I liked. He was forceful, he knew a lot of stuff, he didn't take any crap. You could tell that he was a good man. He pretty well explained to all the junior counselors what was going to happen next. Namely, the kids are going to show up at camp. How they were going to be dispersed to their cabin groups and what was going to happen after that. A rundown of the schedule for the next 3 hours. I didn't notice them eyeballing me. I didn't notice anybody eyeballing me. They were all glad to be busy with one more week of outdoor school. The students showed up on their buses. The students were assigned to each junior counselor, and when all the cabins were together, they headed to each cabin that they were going to be living in with their counselor. I went to Cougar Cabin with my 10 students, and as they were unpacking, in comes Grungus, Jack Sharpe. Fairly tall guy, dark-haired. I have to admit, he was handsome. He was a good-looking guy, and he was just nice, just, a go-get-em, pleasant guy that you just couldn't help but like. When he smiled, you smiled. That's all I can say. He made the rounds of the cabin, spent a few minutes in each cabin, let the students know who he was, and ask questions of them to find out a little bit more about them and answer a couple questions. He got into my cabin, and just like most groups of 6th graders, there's a mouthy kid, someone wanting to screw around, maybe a problem student, maybe a bunch of students there just waiting for someone to pull the trigger so they can all just have themselves a real cluster. Grungus saw that. The first kid that opened his mouth and started to mess around, Grungus engaged him, found out who he was, had a nice little chat with him, but just a little chat, and very calmly and firmly introduced the idea to that student that you answer when you're given a question, but you don't talk unless you're told to. He did that by his action, by his demeanor, by his body language, not by blatting it out. I saw this. I saw how he dealt with my cabin and had them all engaged and all under control, just like that. It was about 2 minutes, and I saw it, and it stuck. All of a sudden I realized this is what I was missing. I didn't know how to do this. It works. Jack Sharpe exited the cabin and said, well, keep unloading, guys. Listen to your counselor. Gave me a wink, and he was gone. I followed on where Jack Sharpe left off. Cabin group was organized, where they were going to sleep, how they were going to sleep, what they were going to do. Got them lined up and ready. We were back on down to the flagpole there for a flag ceremony. Just like that. No problem. Flag ceremony went on. When it was done, we lined up. Digger talked to him again about dinner and what was going to happen, how it worked and that sort of thing, and in we went. The whole thing just carried on beautifully. Digger had it organized, the senior staff had their places, they knew what they were doing, and most importantly, they were mentoring the junior counselors. Not telling them what to do, but showing them how it works. What a concept. After dinner was over, the students in each class that was there met with their teacher and the resource specialist that they were going to be working with the next day. During that class meeting, the junior counselor boys by themselves and the junior counselor girls by themselves had their junior counselor meetings. This was another indication of how things worked to the positive. Our 3 senior counselors were there, and they covered the basics about what was going to happen tonight with campfire, what was expected of us. One of the things was we were each going to lead a song at campfire sometime during the week, preferably the first 2 days. They also talked about what was going to go on after campfire, which was a night hike, which basically your group doesn't know where they're going, but you do, and they have to follow you. And then the nighttime routine about them going to bed, going to sleep, and that sort of thing. This was all covered. Then came the star of the show. In walked Digger, the site supervisor. He lined out what the next 3 days was going to look like, what his expectations were. And one of the first big expectations was be on time. Your cabin group will be organized, you get them ready ahead of time, and they will be where they need to be before it starts. We will not be waiting for a cabin group to show up 10 minutes late to have flag ceremony. That was not going to fly. He also mentioned that the students were going to be dealt with, that they were not going to be permitted to carry on and screw around, shout things out, act up, that sort of thing. That as early as possible, they were going to be dealt with. And if we had a problem or couldn't do it or it wasn't working right, to talk to our senior counselor and they'd help us out with it. They wouldn't do it. They would show us how to do it. Step back and let you do it. Digger also had some terms for wise guys, screw-offs, 6th grade students that made a pain in the butt of things. He called them weenie heads. Those weenie heads, it wasn't until the following fall that changed from weenie heads to twits. Those twits. And then I think it was the following year, twits morphed into twinks. And when he called somebody a twink, that was a 6th grade kid acting like a kid that was being a pain in the butt. It had nothing to do with 2020, what a twink is, being a gay, homosexual, whatever. It had none of that connotation. It was a messing around little kid, that's all it was. Digger covered this stuff. The night went on. There was a nice campfire, nice little skit by the senior counselors to show everyone else what skits are all about. Songs. There were a couple returning counselors, junior counselors, that led some songs, so we all knew how that worked. The whole thing just carried right along without any big missteps. There's funny things that happened, and all that. But we went to bed that night after campfire, after the night hike, with the kids. In the dining hall, Digger met with the senior counselors and the resource people. What he wanted to know was what they saw in the junior counselor staff. Who was weak, who was strong, what we were dealing with, and how we were going to take care of it. That's what he was after. I didn't know any of this. What I found out later was Digger had his eye on me. I had very dark brown hair, and it was long. It was sometimes in a ponytail. Sometimes it was just out hanging out there. Digger, his background was from a farm out in Sherwood. He'd been in agriculture, his dad was, that sort of thing. He was not into hippies. Hey man, dope smoking, dumb shit hippies. Well, no, he's got no use for that crap. What I found out a year or two later was that he told the staff that night, you keep an eye on that guy. What's his name? Cletus? Yeah. Keep an eye on him. I don't know if that's good or not, but he says, if he does one thing out of line, you tell me. I'm sending him packing right away. Anything. He's gone. That must have pushed a button on Rhoda. Rhoda was 56 years old. Her sons were all grown up. Her youngest son was a year or two older than me, but she liked guys. She liked people that reminded her of her sons. She saw something in me. The next couple days, I took what I learned from Grungus and controlling the kids, being on time, and just happening to know a little bit about soils because I'd spent 2 years working on a dairy farm in New Jersey before I came to Oregon in the outdoor school. Without knowing it, I had something in common with Digger. Without knowing it, Digger had something in common with me. We knew certain things like that. Mine was hands-on, his was hands-on there. It worked out really well. I sang my very first song and led it. Wausau the 42nd. The sixth graders ate it up. They cheered, they roared, it was great. I could play off of that. That was another thing that I learned, is things that you do that they really get excited about, you can use them to get more attention to what you're teaching. Grungus had a song, and they loved that. And it wasn't much later than after the first day that Grungus got those kids at outdoor school all stirred up. There was a major conflict there. Which one was better, Grungus or Cletus? I realized what he was doing, and I fed into it too. And we had this little, I'm better than he is thing going. We'd look at each other, smile, wink, and play the game some more. After a short while, the kids figured out that we were having fun with them. But they still played into it. The activities I got to do were controlled, educational, a lot of fun. The kids had a great time. It was just unbelievable how great that week went. Towards the end of the week, it was about Thursday, there was, in the afternoon, instead of the kids bait casting or shooting bows and arrows, doing the normal kind of fun things, they had a field day. This is where the cabins competed cabin to cabin. Caber toss, archery, tug of war, all these activities. The kids were geared up for it. The junior counselors with their cabin group went to each one of these competitions. And it was one of these things where even if you lost, your whole cabin group had an awful great time. While that was going on, Digger was back in the dining hall with the resource specialists. They were discussing how the week went, what they were going to do tomorrow on Friday, getting an overview about the counselors. It turned out that early on, Digger figured out that I was a good guy, that I knew what I was doing. There would be no reason to send me home, of course. He was very pleased. It was also during that field day that my father couldn't take it any longer. He was so curious what was going on. I didn't say anything after the first week of outdoor school. I was not pleased. It was just not a good thing for me at all. It wasn't a good thing for the outdoor school. I just shut up. When I left for this one, I was quiet too. He had to see what was going on, so he came out. He invited himself out. When he set foot on camp, any stranger that comes on camp, Digger had a policy. The staff member, whoever it is, finds out who they are and what they're doing there and who they need to see. You don't get on site without everybody knowing what this is. They found out that this man was my dad. I didn't know he was coming. He was introduced to Digger, who sat him down right away, just like Digger does. You sit down right next to him, he scoots over even closer, you have a cup of coffee, and you're talking face to face. And Digger is talking about me. Rhoda comes over and is talking about me. I didn't find out till a couple years later that Digger says, when we first saw Cletus, I didn't like what I saw, and I told him that first thing he does wrong, send him out, send him home right away. I guess Digger says, well, we're never going to do that. I've got a place for him here, and he's been working really well. I guess he carried on and pretty well puffed up my dad's head. My dad never told me about this until I asked him a couple years later. I didn't know about it till Rhoda told me one evening I was over her place drinking coffee. But my dad got to see the program going on there with the field day. Of course, he was invited for dinner, and he stayed for dinner. And they made sure to drag me up to lead a song so he could see me doing it. He stayed for campfire, and after campfire is when I finally got to see him face to face. Kids are in bed. Junior counselors up at the dining hall, playing around, having fun. Everyone else at camp is up there too. There's my dad meeting all my JC friends and stuff, seeing what it's all about. I think you realize it was a good thing that I'd fallen into, and some really good people. That week of outdoor school was the turning point in my life, the start of my adult life. I had made friends in junior counselors that week, people that were just decent, smart, and wanting to be good counselors. And more importantly, the girls up at that camp, Camp Adams, the junior counselor girls, yeah, they were pretty. They were real nice, but they were counselors first. This was like a fellowship that was just good. It was effective and nice looking too. I had learned so much more that week by being mentored than I had in the previous week by being talked at. I was sad to go home. Fortunately, Rhoda made contact. It was one of these contacts that never went away. When I got home, of course, I went back to school. I was feeling pretty good. Being it was Lake Oswego High School, and that really sucked, I didn't say much to them. A couple days after I was home, I We got back in touch with a bunch of junior counselors. We all got together and went out to a couple of elementary schools that had been at our outdoor school program, just to visit individual classes, say hello one more time that we didn't forget them, lead them in a song, and answer questions that they didn't get answered before about who we were and what we do and all that sort of thing. It was just one of these, tie it up in a bow and here you go. Once again, those junior counselors, that was something that I'd never seen done at the other camp or anywhere else. It was just one of these good things. That was 50 years ago. That whole experience, coming about from being a failure to being recognized as an okay counselor, a good man, that's made all the difference in the world to me. It's one of these things where I may get old and forget about it, but the experience was still there for me, still there for all those people that I knew back then.